Dustin White.
And I'm Matt Robinson.
We just finished our second year of basketball together, like full time. I've filled in with stuff in the past years, and so it's not like I had never worked with Matt prior to that. But yeah, this was our second full year of day in and day out.
Mm-hmm.
It's me and Matt. So I mean, I guess there's two different ways to answer that. I've worked with Matt on and off for years. Hard to say exactly.
I can't remember when you started working with us, but it's been.
This is my 14th year of being along for the ride in some way or another. I started football.
So I would say probably we did games together for
probably.
at least once or twice for 14 years, more than that as it built.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, you took over the role for Greg full-time as the lead man. How has that transition been for you, and how do you feel like you've kind of handled that role?
It's been pretty seamless as far as I can, on my end. I mean, there's added responsibilities, of course, and Greg kind of, laid it all out and showed me what the job was and how to make it work. And as far as the communications with other schools, as far as, athletic directors, coaches, that sort of thing. And then just the prep work, but I knew what was coming. And like I said, I don't know. I mean, nothing really jumped out at me that was too unexpected.
I knew what to expect when I was getting into it. It's obviously been a lot more time consuming the last couple of years. And so that means figuring it out with my family, making sure that everybody is okay with me being gone a lot more, and that we are able to get the kids where they need to be, and all that stuff that happens at home. But I don't. It's been. I haven't regretted it or anything like that. It's been a lot of fun, and I feel like a pretty easy transition into it. Again, I knew kind of what to expect going into it.
You're coming up on 30 years next winter. How much has broadcasting changed since you started to now? But just explain that kind of reaction and emotion for you.
As far as the technical side of it, the biggest thing that's changed is the equipment. We've used all different kinds of stuff over the years. We used to have to call certain places to make sure they had a landline available in order to broadcast a game because cell towers in the area or, the cell signal wouldn't pick up. Now, basically, anywhere we go, we can use a cell phone in order to broadcast the games, and that's primarily what we do when we're outside of Effingham, St. Anthony, or T-Town, because we still use the Marty system that we've used ever since I got here for those locations, generally speaking. But the technology's helped. We've tried to do different things as far as even Skyping games over the years and that sort of stuff.
Glad we don't have to do that.
No, yeah, very glad we don't have to do that. But, for the most part, as far as actually the games, it's about the same as sitting down and doing a game and where working with the people as far as making sure that they know we're coming and that sort of stuff. That really hasn't changed. I guess the biggest change has been the, technical side of things. And the games have changed a little bit over the years with rules and whatnot, but nothing major.
Those phone games sound a lot better now than they used to.
Yes, they do.
And you don't have. There used to be a gym or two that you go to, and you'd be like, I don't know if this is going to work with a cell phone.
Yeah, I really enjoy being the play-by-play guy in basketball in particular, but all the sports, to be honest, that I cover with volleyball, baseball, softball, and it's one of those things where I feel comfortable with that. But we're both there. We're spending the time. Dustin does a lot of pre-game work as far as the stats that he keeps, and he shares them with me, and that's a big help going into these games. And it's a lot of fun to be a part of the sports in our area that's so good, and kind of fell into a sweet spot here as far as being able to cover so many good teams, quality teams, and working with Dustin's a lot of fun. He's the best stat guy that's out there, and he can keep more stats than anybody. and I don't know how he does it all and keep it straight. And we always tell people our stats aren't exactly the Bible, but they're pretty close, especially when Dustin's keeping them.
Now, going off each other, I'm sure that cannot be easy because you got to know who's talking, who's not. But how do you guys do it?
To me, and we'll get his thoughts on it. It's more of a rhythm thing that we've built up over the years, and as the play-by-play guy, I feel like I need to leave him space to talk. Now, depending on what's going on, sometimes that's not always an option. The pace of play dictates a lot of that. But even then, I feel like I need to work harder to get him because people want to know what he's thinking as far as that side of it too, of what's going on with the game. And so it's just one of those things where we got into a rhythm. He kind of knows when his spot is, I would think.
Yeah.
And vice versa, when he's doing play by play, I do need to try to find that spot too. But I think it's just, it kind of works.
Yeah, you figure it out. Like, I mean, we do this, games together, 50, 60,
65, yeah.
more than that times a year. So you figure it out pretty quickly. I will overstep occasionally, but you do have to understand.
So will I.
Yeah, you have to understand, like, the game action kind of dictates whether you get to say the thing you want to say or not. And trust me, like every game, stuff gets left
Yeah.
on the cutting room floor, so to speak, because the game just didn't allow for it. But one thing I will say is that, like, even before I ever did any work for the station, I listened to Greg and Matt work games. Sometimes, like when I was at the newspaper, I would listen to a basketball game while I was covering it. I'd listen to them broadcast it, so I had a pretty good idea of what to expect and what the kind of rhythm of their broadcast was. And so I've always felt like I've had a pretty good feel for when I should pipe up and when I shouldn't, even probably going into the very first game.
And kind of going back into that, I listened to Larry and Greg growing up as a kid, and way before I started broadcasting games, and you just kind of pick up on how that works, and
You just know that, like, I mean, if you ever listen to a broadcast or, on TV too, like if guys are stepping on each other, then you just don't, it confuses the issue. You don't know what's going on. And so, and again, you work together frequently enough, you have an idea of how that person's mind works and when they're going to have something to say.
and there's a difference between stepping on someone and kind of emphasizing something.
Well, sure. If something really exciting is
Yeah.
happening, yeah, I'll definitely go over the top of you just because the moment dictates it. If it's a huge shot, then yeah, they're gonna, I'm
Hear some emotion and
well.
some
Plus,
excitement.
in some of those games,
Yeah.
like I mean, especially if it's one team that we cover and one team that we
Right.
don't cover, and we can be a little more biased about what we're doing, then you can get a little more excited. And if a kid. If Jude Traub hits hits a
Half-court
desperation three is to send a game into overtime, well, I'm going to yell over the top of it
Yeah.
a little bit, and I don't think it necessarily takes anything away from the broadcast.
No, and I'll try to keep going with the play-by-play so they know. But yeah, that's a way to emphasize something big is happening. Tape, and then Friday night back here for St. Anthony and T-Town on 97.9 XFM. Should be another couple of good games towards the end of this week.
Absolutely, and get here early Friday night. But if you don't make it, we got you covered. So hopefully it'll be a packed house, and there'll still be plenty of people out there in radio. But girls regionals, they get started on Saturday as well, and it's a fun time of year, but also obviously can be kind of a gut-wrenching time of year for kids too, as their seasons and sometimes their careers come to an end. But you play sports to get to this point, and we're hoping to see some good deep runs from some of our local teams.
If I need a point, I'm like, hey, I'm 2 points short. He's going to have it. But if for some reason he doesn't, I think he can trust me to ask too, and we'll compare and figure it out.
We're generally not both wrong.
Generally not. No.
They might have it wrong on the assembly hall scoreboard.
We've ran into that before. Yeah.
But yeah.
And then that causes confusion for me.
But I don't know as far as how I would answer that question. I mean, I go back to the point I made before that, obviously Matt is just a professional, and so it's nice to be associated with somebody who does the job so well. Again, I just go back to being an enjoyable person to be around. When the game's not happening, and if I wasn't enjoying that part of it, with as time consuming as
Yeah.
this is, I wouldn't probably do it anymore. Like I'd be looking for a way out if it wasn't just just a just a fun thing to do that's worth you know committing a really
Yeah.
big chunk of my free time to.
Yeah, and the same goes to Dustin there as far as that end too, and that also extends to when we get into the other guys that help with Mike
Absolutely, yeah.
and now Jeff and Greg still helping. So yeah, I mean, it's a pleasure to be around the guys. We enjoy the sports that we're covering, and everybody just really does a nice job of handling that. You know, if there is a discrepancy, I always say go with yours. I mean, because I trust it. And if we're off here and there, I think people will understand that. But at the same time, I think they also understand that we're not off very often, and that's generally due to him and what he does as far as the stat work and that sort of stuff. And the thing, when I was doing stats, I would keep rebounds and points as far as made and missed shots and that sort of stuff. But he's able to extend that to assists and block shots, especially if we figure out somebody's doing well with those categories. And I can kind of do that, if I figure out someone's doing well, but I can't keep the whole team and track all of that. It's just amazing to me that he does that.
Well, if I could interject, and you can't keep all that stuff unless the person that is doing the play-by-play is doing an exceptionally good job of describing the action. Because if you were to put a camera on me during a game and just leave it on me, there's times where I'm not even looking at the floor because I'm writing. And so I can't get it all right unless I'm pretty sure that everything he's saying and the way he's describing it is accurate and complete. It's not, there's no holes in it. It's a very good telling of exactly what happened on the floor. And so sometimes you rely on that. So it's a team thing, I mean, you can't really have one without the other. And then just sort of going back to trying to keep other stuff. I actually go back all the way to my time at the Daily News again when, Kurt Becker used to contribute sometimes. He'd write stories, and he'd write a box score that had offensive rebounds, assists, blocked shots, stuff like that. And people talked about it like, well, he does such a good job with that. And so I thought, well, if Kurt, not really understanding exactly what Kurt means to the area or what esteem he was held in at the time. I was just a kid out of school, and I just went, well, if they think he's good, I can be that good. And so even then I was trying to make sure I kept all that stuff, which is a little more challenging in some ways when you don't have a radio broadcast, when you don't have a play-by-play guy telling you what's happening, but then also maybe when you're just keeping a book and you're not trying to think of what you're going to say when the time comes, maybe it's a little simpler. I don't know, but it's just always been important to me to be able to try to give as much of that information as possible, because like a kid might only have 3 rebounds in a game, but if they were all offensive and he stuck it back in 2 of those 3 of those times and they won the game by 5 points, well, that's huge. And so to be able to relay that information and maybe get a kid recognition that he might not have otherwise gotten, that's he or she might have otherwise gotten. I think that's important, because that's really what we're in this for, is to try and talk up as many of these kids as possible in a positive way. And so sometimes the way you do that is by being able to say, well, gosh, he only scored 2 points, but he had 5 assists. That's still really important, but you might not know it unless somebody hits you over the head with it.
What would be the toughest challenge for you both while broadcasting?
Okay, so I thought about this a little bit, and I think kind of piggybacking off of what I was saying a minute ago about these being high school kids and trying to be really positive all the time, is that some games don't lend themselves to that very well. Like sometimes the game is a blowout, sometimes it's just not very well played because, again, they're teenagers, okay? But they're just out there playing for the love of it, and again, they're children, and so you gotta stay positive. You gotta keep things interesting for the people listening, and sometimes that can be a lot more work than when a game is just
True.
like when a game is just awesome, and it comes down to the wire and every play matters. Well, you don't have to work very hard there. You just have to keep paying attention and keep telling people what's going on. But when it's a 25-point game in the third quarter and everybody knows how it's going to turn out, well, then the focus becomes, well, how do we put the best spin on this? And I like to think we do a pretty good job of finding the things to focus on, and making sure that, like, again, a lot of kids still get some nice things said about them on both teams, not just the one that ends up winning in that situation.
That's a very good point. And, kind of piggybacking on with that, like you said, we try to keep it interesting. We try to be positive, but we also have to keep it fair to the listener to really let them know what's happening. And, some games when it gets out of hand or whatever, or a team just has a bad night, I mean, you have to express that. But at the same time, yeah, these are high school kids. They're not getting paid. They're, 90, well, I shouldn't say that in our area. We got a lot of kids that get to go on and play sports. But at the same time, this is going to be a lot of their sports career, so to speak, is going to wrap up at the high school level. And, you want to be fair. You want to respect the fact that they're putting in the effort to get to practice to play these games. And, you want to be fair to them. Make sure you keep it a positive aspect, but while still letting the listener know what's happening. Between us and the schools that we're covering, we try to make sure they know we're going to be there. I mean, that's a must for me, is to, hey, make every effort to contact the ADs and even the coaches if we can. Say, hey, these are the games we're doing for you this week, or we'd like to be at your place. Is there any issue or anything? And for the regular season, for the most part, I mean, we've been around enough. People know, we're going to be there, what we're doing. I mean, even like when we go to the Salem tournament, they know we're there. They know why we're there. It's really when we get into the postseason and we get out and beyond, maybe facilities that we don't normally go to, that gets a little more. And then, from my aspect, he does a ton of stat work behind the scenes, keeping up with area stats with these kids. I don't know how he has the time to do it. I'm appreciative that he does, and even more appreciative that he shares it with me, because that would all be stuff that he can keep to himself, rightfully so. But he does what he to make the broadcast better.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the biggest part of what happens away from the broadcast, is just that, like, I don't just show up to the game and do it. I mean, I probably could and do a decent job of it, just because I'm just keeping a book, and at the end of the day, a big part of my job is to just keep those stats during the game. But I think if you want to really be able to analyze the game and give some good color commentary, well, you got to know the teams and the kids that you're broadcasting, and the way we do things, and the number of schools that we try to cover. Well, we're not at every Effingham game. We're not at every St. Anthony game. We're not at every T-Town game. And so even though we do see those teams a lot, it's important to keep up with what they're doing on the nights that we don't broadcast their games. And even more so, like, with the other area schools, National Trail Conference schools specifically, like, we don't see them near as often, but I still want to know when the time comes. I don't want to be caught off guard by somebody being any good. I don't want to get on the air and be like, well, so-and-so scored 19 points tonight, and act like I can't believe it, when the fact of the matter is that kid averages 19 points, and it's not surprising at all. So, I mean, that's... And as far as when it gets done, just probably instead of sleeping a lot of times, checking out the local media to try and find that scoring information. I wish I could keep track of more, but it's just hard. Points are about the extent of what I can easily track down without getting my entire life wrapped up in it.
And another thing is it has become slightly easier to keep track of teams that we don't follow as much because of technology and things like Max Preps or whatever. whatever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not 100%.
It's
And we try to give ourselves an idea about teams when we are going outside of the area, and that sort of research takes up some time too.
I do have to bug some people sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, there's people who probably get a little sick of hearing from me throughout the year, but you know, I think I hope that it's worth it whenever, you know, again, come in TC tournament time, I can say that, you know, such and such a kid from this school is leading his team with this kind of scoring average, because that's their time to shine. You know, they get a lot of publicity during that week, and so it's times like that that I'm glad to have gone to a little extra trouble. The only time I could ever remember feeling uncomfortable broadcasting a game at all would probably, you have to go all the way back to the very beginning. A little bit of nervousness there. Sure. Gosh, that's so long ago. I can't really remember, but yeah, as far as us being, you know, the main team, so to speak, zero discomfort that I can recall. You know, once it came to postseason time and we were splitting up a little bit, I mean, the T-Town boys games and the sectional up at Tolono, both of those games were overtime games. Specifically, the Gavin Addis game, you know, with literally a buzzer beater to send it into overtime. I mean, it's hard for anything else to stand out. But even the great games that we do, a lot of times, I mean, you get a lot of close games over the course of the year, and so it's hard for them to stand out. I would say personally, not so much because of any one matchup, but I always just look forward to working the NTC championship game with Matt, and it's really not because of, again, any specific matchup or teams involved. It's just more because of the atmosphere there and the fact that we get to do it, and so that's what stands out to me. And not this year or last year, but obviously I was with Matt when Altamont and Tuscola went 4 overtimes in a sectional game, and that was the atmosphere in that building was crazy, and Matt was doing incredibly impressive work considering the backstory of that game for him, with his son Mason playing in the game and him still just being a consummate professional. That's what stands out to me. So I'm coloring outside the lines of your question a little bit, because that's actually before we were full time together.
Yeah,
but that's kind of the one I go back to a lot as far as specific games.
That's the one I was going to mention, and you know, like you said, it was because of the atmosphere. It was because it was 4 overtimes. It was because of what it meant. And ultimately, obviously, we would rather seen Altamont find a way to win that game, but it's still a game that people talk about all the time. And obviously because of, like I said, the tie there, but still, people will mention that, and that'll be a big one. So as far as that goes, yeah. And, I mean, as far as us being together, you know, we've been talking a lot about basketball, and rightfully so, because we cover so many games, but, you know, the 2A state baseball tournament last year, the rain delay, and I mean, it was great to be there to broadcast that championship game, but what it all happened to get there.
It wasn't so great to be eating in an Applebee's, wondering when this game is actually going to happen and when we're going to go back to the stadium. Yeah, it's funny, that one slipped my mind, but
and it was. Sorry, but it was kind of complicated by the fact, in a sense, that we were there all weekend because we were covering Altamont too.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, most announcers would have just been there for one school, and they would have been there this time, this day, and not had to worry about. But, I mean, that's the lucky thing that we have, is that, we got 2 teams at state.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many broadcasters get the opportunity to say that?
And we came a game away from having that in basketball this year too. You know? I mean, it's and that's just part of the beauty of working in this area. And if you'll indulge me, and again, coloring outside the lines of the question a little bit, but obviously, like, being from Neoga, I go back to the girls' super sectional game when they went to state a few years ago. And I was working with Greg then, but he was letting me do the play-by-play because, again, just kind of those meant a little bit more to me for personal reasons. But being able to have played a small part in the retelling of that story, and knowing almost instantly when my phone blew up after it was over with that there were a lot of people at home listening. That one stands out to me. So there you go.
So baseball wise, before we go to the next question, pulling in the driveway at 4:05 a.m. We'll never forget, because I know you wanted to get home, Dustin, as well.
I don't know. I don't really remember too much about that, but now it's a good story to tell.
Yeah.
We weren't necessarily excited about all aspects of it in the moment, but you get a little time between then and now, and it does become a good story to tell.
I just remember after we wrapped up the post-game show, and we did say, a quick congratulations to some St. Anthony fans and coaches and whatever, but we got out to the car and it was 1:05 on the dash when we were leaving Peoria. And it's like, oh, well, I guess state championship game was won on a Sunday.
Yes, it was.
Some coaches will email like, hey, here's who I'm planning on starting. Some coaches let you know right before the game. However they want to handle that, I'm good with. But boy, coaches across the board, basketball, baseball, softball, whatever sport we're covering, they have been generous with their time, and they are always courteous to us, and then post-game interviews. I feel like that's a spot where I could improve, is doing a better job with the questions and the interviews and that sort of thing. But that being said, boy, I coached a long time ago, and there's games where I wouldn't want a microphone in front of my face after coming out of the locker room chatting with the kids. And these guys do it, and ladies do it, and boy, they do a good job, generally speaking, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I can't think of too many people over the years that, we have privately said, boy, it's just no fun.
Yeah,
talk to this person after the game.
There's moments,
certain games, certain losses are just difficult.
Yeah,
and you're having to pry stuff out of a coach, but they still come up and do the job and understand that that's part of coaching in this area. We might show up and we'd like to have a word with you afterwards, but and then I don't do as much of it before the games as Matt does, but it's always nice to have that rapport with people and to see that they're happy to see you there and that they don't dread talking to you either. I think we've got a pretty good relationship with a lot of these coaches where, we're friendly with them and they're willing to tell us things that they know
they can trust with us.
Right. Yeah. Not everything is for the air, but they're willing to have that relationship with us that they can give us the full picture, and we can do with that information what we need to.
Yeah, they're real easy to deal with. They're real friendly, and if they don't like us being there or whatever, they do a great job of hiding it.
Yeah.
Well, I think the fact that we were both raised and attended NTC schools is big as far as understanding what that conference means, what's important within that conference, and how important the sports are in that conference, and obviously how big the National Trail Conference basketball tournament is. That's the thing to me that, he understands, he appreciates it. I grew up with it too. So from speaking specifically of the NTC, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, if you've been in one of those schools, you just know that going to school that week is a little different. Yep. There's a different energy in the building, and you go to the games in Altamont and you see people there that you don't see maybe anywhere else all year long. And I still think it's that way. It's probably not quite as much like that as it used to be. And this is not old man yelling at the clouds here. It's easier for people to see it in other ways. But the energy of it hasn't changed. It still means so much to those programs to be there on that floor and to play for a chance to win. Obviously, people who have done this job before us understand what it means too, and we wouldn't broadcast that tournament the way we do if it hadn't been for them understanding how much it means. But I do think that having been in those hallways, when you were in high school, and just sort of maybe having an idea of what those kids are feeling those days, place can help you get yourself kind of jacked up for that broadcast and to be excited to be there and happy to be there.
Yeah, and growing up in Altamont, I don't want to say nothing else happened that week while you were a student there. But, and another, I mean, you still had things to take care of school wise and that sort of stuff. But, yeah, it was important. And there's a lot behind the scenes that a lot of people don't realize that Altamont does to make that tournament work. I mean, and I'm talking the kids throughout the days as far as that sort of stuff. There's a lot to make that successful. So, you know, it's important to every single school in that conference, and it shows with the energy that's there that week.
Off that semifinal win over Altamont, a team that had just beaten them kind of handily whenever they played in the regular season, and so they got the revenge there, and now they've got a chance to avenge last year's championship game loss. But listen, this is a St. Anthony team that's not easy to play against. They've got a couple of really special scores, and they're just the usual Cody Ranker team, a very solid basketball team that plays the kind of defense that gives you nightmares.
20-2.
18 straight wins for St. Anthony, and that propels them into the championship game of this National Trail Conference tournament.
Let's send it to Gail for scores from around the area. Gail. For Gail back in the studios, triple headers, a long night for everybody. Appreciate all of your work. For Dustin, I'm Matt Robinson. Thanks for joining us for NTC Action on 97.9 XFM.
What are the challenges that you guys face the most when you're not working together? For example, 3 games on one station or 2 stations this year. Effingham girls played at Bethalto. You and Jeff were there. Mm-hmm. Dustin was at a different game. And how do you guys handle that when you're not working together in that situation?
Well, I mean, regular nights, if we're not working together, it's generally because he's one place, I'm another. And that's pretty simple. You know what I mean? He takes care of his game, I take care of my game. You know, we make sure we're good to go with equipment and that sort of stuff. But other than that, you mentioned the three games that we broadcast. That's definitely unusual to do. We done it maybe one other time a long time ago, but one of the games was local, so we had a different set of equipment. But Jeff and I went over to Bethalto, did that game with kind of some, I don't want to say janky equipment or whatever.
It was a makeshift set.
Yeah, we made it work. But
I wasn't sure it was going to work, quite frankly. But
we had one little snafu, but we were lucky how it worked, and that's way behind the scenes. So
I was just glad that it was you guys with that set up and not me, because I was a little nervous about it.
I was confident that we could get a game on the air. And at that point in time, to me, that's what was important. Especially with the distance over there, there were probably some Effingham fans that just couldn't go. And so that was important to do that in my mind. And then kind of the same with the other games, too. I mean, St. Anthony was, at Arcola?
Well, they were playing Arcola at Central A&M.
Okay, at Central A&M.
No, wait a minute.
See, this is where it all washes together.
They were playing at Arcola it was St. Anthony girls, wasn't
it?
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
They were playing at Arcola, you're right.
Yeah,
Yep.
And then T-Town was at Paris, if memory serves.
And Greg did that one with Mike Wilson.
And that's the key. We had Greg that can do play-by-play. Dustin can do play-by-play. I can do play-by-play. And then Jeff Tunn stepped up and throughout the year this year and helped us out and was available. Mike Wilson made himself available. And then Seth Bonoff worked with you. So, that aspect of being able to have guys available, and then plus the people back at the station.
Yeah, you got to have good board ops taking care of everything and knowing what the deal is and being able, especially on one station, to hop from one game to the next seamlessly. But again, I don't think it was as much of a challenge as you might think, because we have good people to rely on, the people back at the studio, those other people that can help with the broadcast. Are you a little more apprehensive when you're working with somebody that you don't work with night in and night out? Maybe a little bit, but I think not really with the kind of the stable that we have built up. I don't, if I'm working a game with Jeff or Mike or Seth, I don't feel any worse about it. There's some things that'll be a little different, but
Sure.
don't feel bad about it. Seth was a new one this year. Jeff
I
was a new
actually
one this
never
year.
worked with him
Yeah.
because of just the circumstances.
And you do feel a little apprehension anytime you're working with someone for the first time, just because you literally don't know. I didn't know this person, but Seth's a good guy. I enjoyed working with him. Jeff Tunn is a great guy. I really enjoyed working with him. Looking forward to doing other stuff with him in the future. But we got a good team here, and that really lessens the challenge.
But it all goes back to the good team here. I realized the situation that we could have 3 of our local teams playing the same night at the sectional level, and it's like, well, you don't want to miss any of these. And then when we saw the schedule, I'm like, it would be possible.
Yeah.
Because of the 6 o'clock start for
Right,
one and
I
the
was gonna say-
7:30 starts for the other two, but figuring out the equipment and management here was like, okay, what can we do? Can we do it? And I'm like, well, I think this will work. And they worked with us and allowed us to do it when they truly didn't have to. And that's another behind the scene things that you don't know, what all goes into it. And it really wasn't to the station's advantage in a sense to make sure we got all 3 on. And it would have been easy to say, we have 2 stations. We can only do 2 games. But the situation dictated this time that we could get more done, and they allowed us to do it. And it's good to have 2 eyes on a game just simply to see, or maybe we disagree on what's happening. That does happen.
It does happen.
And but that's okay. You have fans that are sitting and watching the same game, not seeing the same thing all the time, or at least the same way. And so I appreciate that he can bring all of that to the table.
Yeah, and Matt is obviously a very strong, technically sound broadcaster. That part, there's lots of those around. But to me, it's more like he knows the area. We've talked about him having done this for a long time now, and he has built up a big knowledge base of what the programs we cover are like, the personalities involved. A lot of times, like actually knowing and being familiar with the people that are involved with those programs, and that's important. When you're talking about a team for a 2-hour broadcast, it's a lot easier when you have some of that information on recall, and he's got a lot of that built up in there. Greg's the same way. You guys are fantastic about having that big knowledge base, and that's the biggest thing. Like I don't know how I'll ever be able to get to that point, but that's what they do well, and what sets them apart and makes them so good for this broadcasting in this area.
And to be able to coordinate a tournament like the Effingham Teutopolis Christmas Classic between 2 schools and make it work as well as they do is super impressive. You're pulling in top talent teams from around the state and outside of, and other states over the years, and they make that work very, very, very well between those schools and getting that all taken care of as far as those games over that tight a window, because these teams don't want to / need to be staying somewhere for 4 or 5 days. Can't do that. So it's a quick tournament, a lot of games in a hurry, but they do a great job with that tournament there. And then the NTC tournament, Alamont's been doing it forever. They know what they're doing, and they make that thing seem a lot smoother than it is, behind the scenes. And I just got a ton of respect for them doing that tournament as well as they do it as well.
The thing, and this is, if you look at a time lapse of my face and body over the last 10 years, you can tell that what's important to me is, am I going to be able to get something good to eat? Okay? And that's the thing that I go back on both of those places. Like, you get taken care of so well behind the scenes, like between games at Altamont and either at Effingham or T-Town during the Christmas tournament. Man, like, I look forward to those for the games, but I look forward to it too because, like, I know that I'm going to get a good meal while I'm there too, and
The camaraderie.
yeah, there's a lot of people there, in those hospitality rooms that want to talk to you, that are happy to be there, happy to be providing a service for the people that are there working, and that means something. You know,
Oh, yeah.
it might seem a little superficial or shallow, but I mean I don't know. It's just a very appealing part of this whole thing is to see familiar faces and go to a place and work and encounter people who are genuinely glad to run into you.
And that's something we don't see some other places. There's some places that other, Salem does a good job too.
Yes.
With their
Yes.
tournament and
Yes.
running it down there.
Uh-huh.
But when we get into postseason or other tournaments and stuff like that, I mean, sometimes you walk into a place and they're like, who are, what, whatever, and that's not the case anywhere around here in these specific places that you mentioned.
There's a big difference between, well, if you want a bottle of water, the concession stands
Yeah.
over there, to, walking into T-Town High School during the Christmas Classic and them saying, hey,
We'll get it for you.
yeah,
We'll bring it to you.
Yeah,
in a
you want
booth.
a plate of brisket,
Yeah.
What do you want on the side there? You can understand why anyone would naturally be more inclined to enjoy the one than the other.
And and like you said, yeah, we enjoy the meal, we enjoy the food, and I truly try not to take advantage of it more than I need to sometimes, but it does matter because we are at these places all day sometimes.
Sure.
And it is such a big help to us, and I always try to show my appreciation to all the work done behind the scenes for everybody involved in those tournaments. And like this year, like going back to one of my favorite games to broadcast was the championship game of the Effingham Tosopolis Christmas Classic, because we had St. Anthony and T-Town in the championship game of that tournament, and that is just, I mean, with the other teams that are in the tournament, that's just almost unbelievable that they both got
Sure, and that leads to obviously a better crowd too, because
Mm-hmm.
the one downside to bringing in teams
Yeah.
from all across the state is that sometimes you'll have the championship game and there won't be very many people there because those people can't bring a fan base because not everybody can just
Yeah.
drive 2, 3, 4 hours to
Mm-hmm.
to a game on a Saturday. But when it's St. Anthony and T-Town, then there's going to be a lot of people there, and that's just gonna be more fun,
Yep.
When it's loud, when people are, getting after each other from across the floor of the student sections and stuff like that. Like that's what high school sports are all about. Sometimes the things I enjoy about a player are not star performances or being the best player. Like, quite frankly, my favorite kids to see play and talk about are usually the ones who are doing the little things that
Yeah.
don't always get mentioned, because I always feel like that's the kind of high school athlete I was. Not a star, just there trying to do my job. And so I can appreciate that a little bit more. And so those are the ones I like to talk about. And quite frankly, the names don't jump out to me when I think about them, because that's the nature of the player they were. The stars wouldn't be there being stars if those kids weren't doing their jobs, and so they deserve a little bit of spotlight. But then it kind of fades, and the names just sort of roll into each other. But in recent years, obviously we've had some really superlative players to cover. I mean, we just got done at the state tournament for boys, and Brock Fearday is one of the best high school basketball players I've ever seen, one of the best high school athletes I've ever seen, because he's probably a better baseball player than basketball player somehow, or at least there's an argument to be made for it. But boy, just a worker who goes out there and goes about his business in a really unassuming way, but puts on star performances
When he needs to.
Yeah, when he needs to. Yeah, I mean, and obviously, you go to last year, and Grace Nelson at Altamont is probably the best high school girls player that I have seen in quite some time. I don't want to give like Brittany Johnson short shrift, because I saw her a little bit when I was at the newspaper at Olney, or when I was at the Effingham newspaper, but covering Albany a lot back in the day, we've had some pretty good ones come through here. But like as far as games that I have broadcast, I mean, I've never broadcast a girls player as talented as Grace is. I mean, you just don't see very many kids from around here end up getting Division One offers to go play basketball. So those are the two names that sort of jumped out to me. But I hate to answer that question and not couch it with. There's so many good ones
Yeah.
that I don't feel super confident in really like making a list.
I agree with Dustin wholeheartedly on that part of it. And if I start mentioning names, I'm going to leave people out.
Yeah.
And that being said, I've been doing it longer. And, I mean, players that are in our coverage area, you know, and I know it's recency bias to a degree, but I think you're not being fair to Brock Fearday if you don't mention him. I mean, 2A baseball player of the year last year, returning All-Stater from his junior year, All-Stater first team this year in basketball. And, I mean, baseball again coming up, he's going to be up there barring something unfortunate. And I don't want to even hardly say that because I don't want that to even get in the atmosphere,
Don't
so to
speak
speak.
it into existence.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's been tremendous. And like you said, unassuming, that sort of thing. So that makes it even that much more fun to cover him. Blair Hardick, had the chance to cover her a little bit. In my early days of broadcasting, gosh, you know, obviously you mentioned Grace Nelson. She's got to be ranked up there. Saw Myers Leonard, you know, playing with Robinson, did games, you know, that when he played against Effingham. Gosh,
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the conversation we had before we started doing the on-camera part of this, is that a lot of times some of the very best players you end up running into are kids that you only see once or twice from other schools, you know, and that's just, you know, because you get down the postseason trail and you start running into some of them. And so that's definitely an aspect of it too. I mean, you go back a few years and I'm guessing that you probably had a chance to see like Eric Hobby play for
Yeah.
Vandalia,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and that it was a really great sectional tournament that featured St. Anthony and T-Town, Vandalia and Albany, I believe it was, and I was
Yeah,
there for
that
the
was-
newspaper.
yeah.
And boy, some awfully good players participating in that. But there's so many of them, and that's
Yeah.
what makes this a difficult question to really answer with any sort of confidence.
I mean, I covered Chad Green, and remember going to Whitey Herzog Field to watch him pitch
Yeah.
in postseason baseball. And now listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that kid's going to be a major league pitcher and throw for the Yankees and the Blue Jays. But boy, I mean, I knew he was really good.
I'll maintain that Chase was
Yeah.
actually
His brother?
probably my favorite high school baseball player to ever cover in any capacity, because he was just such a good high school
Such
shortstop.
a good player.
Good shortstop, good hitter. Man, but we could, again.
Yeah, I mean, where do
If
we
I-
stop?
If I start talking about them, you know, how do I leave out Derek Thompson's pitching? You know,
Sure.
when T-Town,
And-
you know, they won a state tournament, you know, and you know, I mean,
I covered
Anthony Heck was a great shortstop
Yeah.
too. So like, it's just, it's a snowball effect, and that's the beauty of covering sports in this area, is that we could sit here and have this conversation for hours, and still leave people out.
Mitch Custer. I covered him early in my, broadcasting, baseball. I don't think I ever did a baseball game with T-Town when he was playing baseball, but obviously, great baseball player, ended up going to Purdue, and then you've got him playing basketball with Johnny King and, Andrew Gobzinski, John Tipton. I mean, I know I'm missing somebody really good off of that team. I just popped out in my head.
And I followed the T-Town girls to the state
Yeah.
tournament so many times since
Yeah.
I started doing this.
Yeah.
And like, there's not a lot of names that actually stick out to me just because there's so
They're
much
such a good
volume
team.
there. You know, I mean, for better or worse, like Micah Jones at CHBC stands out to me just because it was such a big deal for CHBC to go. And that's not to say it's not a big deal when T-Town goes. I know it's a big deal every time, but they sort of run together a little bit more than when a school like Cowden Herrick, makes that sort of once in a generation run to the state tournament like Neoga did. Obviously, Sidney Richards jumps out to me too in that regard.
But we've got kids now. I mean, Nancy Ruhal now for St. Anthony.
Yep.
Dayana Hazlett over at Brownstown St. Elmo in girls basketball. We've talked about Brock Fearday now. And that's what now we have been blessed with is all these kids and athletes. They've seen others do it before.
Yep.
And that high tide continues to raise the ships.
And there will be more. That's the thing you can pretty much take to the bank.
We're just blessed by it.
Dustin, you told me how at SIU Carbondale covering T-Town that you would love an opportunity to get to cover our local teams at the U of I where Illinois plays. What would that mean to you to actually get to cover a team on that court and do it with Matt?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was kind of a bucket list type of thing for me. You grow up in this area, and look, I got Eastern Illinois on my chest. I went to school there. I worked there. But you grow up in this area, and there's a pretty good chance if you're a sports fan, well, you're going to be a U of I sports fan, right? It's just a high-profile program. And I got a lot of years invested in following that basketball program. And so you've seen a lot of games there. I've been in the stands for a lot of games there. But there's, the idea of getting a chance to sit courtside and, be sitting there doing some pale comparison of what Brian Barnhart does, getting a chance to be that guy sitting there on that court. Yeah, I don't know. It's special. I don't know if that. I don't know how much sense that makes to everybody, but to me, like once those teams got to super sectionals this year, I just sat there thinking, I just want one of them to win, so I get that opportunity. You've had the chance to do it before, but I don't know. For some reason, that one just means a little more. It's a little bit different feeling than we've been to Redbird Arena or whatever they call it now, CEFQ right? Arena. I've been there dozens of times at this point, which is again speaks to this area. And I've been up to Peoria, been up to the Civic Center to cover a state tournament before, but this one just meant a little more for those reasons.
Going up there to the State Farm Center and doing it, with Dustin was a lot of fun because it was his first time, and it's always kind of fun to see it through someone else's eyes a little bit, and it was only my second time at State Farm Center because I never got to go before it was at Peoria. So, it was one of those things where, it was exciting for me to get to do it when T-Town went a few years ago. And now that St. Anthony was there, different aspect with being the play-by-play guy, so that was fun, a fun part of it too. But like Dustin said, it's special anytime you get to go there. And I don't want to say it's as special to us as it is to the kids that are playing on the court, but it is an honor to be there and to be broadcasting those games, and we appreciate those teams that have taken us on those rides, baseball, softball, basketball, whatever.
Well, and you talk about seeing it through other people's eyes. When you go cover a state tournament, and gosh, I made a list the other day of baseball, basketball, volleyball, all the state tournaments that I've had opportunity to cover, and it's a long list. But you look around and you see other media there that are pretty clearly doing it for the first time, and it's like watching. It's kind of like watching your kids open up Christmas presents. You're kind of seeing it through those innocent eyes. I don't know if this is landing on pretty thick here, but it is kind of fun to watch people go through that for the first time and how excited they are to do it. And for us, it's old hat, but that doesn't mean that we don't enjoy it because, boy, it hasn't stopped being fun yet. But that's. Again, very lucky to be in that boat.
And I enjoy making a trip, or at least around the floor, whatever, to see the students, to see the parents, to see the fans of these schools. Like I said, especially if it's a rare opportunity for them, which it is a rare opportunity. I don't care what school, what program, whatever. You get to state while you're
Nothing's a
a
given.
part of the school that, whether you're a freshman through senior on the team, cheering for it, whatever. It's a rare opportunity,
Right.
and it's fun to watch people kind of take it all in.
Yeah, 4 years is a short window in the grand scheme of things, and so even for programs like at Teutopolis, where it seems like they just make it to state,
And something,
all the time,
yeah.
like I mean, for those kids, it's
their time.
It's still a once in a lifetime thing, probably, and so they're not taking it for granted, and neither should we.
At this point, you're in the Final Four. Everything's going to be difficult. You see Anthony Bulldogs. You are bringing home a big trophy, whether it's for a second, or in this case, it's going to be third or fourth. Got plenty to play for in their own minds.
Sometimes during a game, I feel like I'm almost too matter of fact. I need to do a better job of maybe adding the flowers to the picture. But at the same time, that's why Dustin's there. That's why the color guy is there. When I'm doing the play-by-play, I don't want to be like, just the facts. So I could maybe do a little bit better job of that. And then, as I said before, post-game interviews, I'd like to do a better job of interviewing the coaches, do a better job of, putting them in better situations. I don't think we ever pin them in a corner or anything, but those are things that I would like to improve on, and I'm trying to improve on. And I ask questions of people, what do I need to do? What should, do you have an idea? And those are coaches that I ask that to. Those are, Larry Wilson, Greg Sapp, those type of things. And I appreciate everybody's input with that. I want to be better every game, and as soon as I don't want to be better, I think it's a problem.
For me, I just did it.
No.
Be a better talker. This is not my profession. This is just a thing I do for fun, and so I can obviously be. My voice could be better. My on air presence could be more polished, and I'm sure that'll just keep getting better as I keep getting more comfortable. I mean, I've been end up doing play by play more often now than ever before, with being full time and doing the NTC tournament and stuff like that. And that's a work in progress. That's not always particularly smooth, especially compared to the other people who have done it. So I guess that's where I'm at, is to just sound more like a person who ought to be on the radio. And then I need a less serious answer. I need a catchphrase of some kind. I think been watching the NCAA tournament this weekend, and I love Bill Raftery.
Onions.
I need I need
Send
an
it
onions.
in.
I need an onions.
Yeah.
I need something. I don't know what it is.
But it's got to be natural, and that's the thing. People have said stuff to me about that, and I'm like, I'm not just gonna say something that's just,
Not just gonna crowbar
force
it
it in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
So-
Yeah, that's the story there, right? That he just sort of blurted it out one time,
Yeah.
and it stuck.
And it stays.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not clever enough for anything like that to ever stick.
As to how many people are actually listening on a game by game or night by night basis. But that being said, you do find out when something happens that is unusual as far as a game, or how good a game was. Then a lot of people were like, hey, I was listening. And I mean, that's always so greatly appreciated, that people are out there and paying attention. And I know this area cares about sports in general so much that that we have listenership. But don't think I take it for granted. But at the same time, it's not one of those things that I think about all the time. But we get messages. I mean, like when we were doing that St. Anthony 2A game, I was stunned by how many text messages I got from people at midnight that were listening.
Mm-hmm.
And, and we talked about it earlier, but that Tuscola-Altamont game, so many, it was because of the game, it was because of Mason playing and I was announcing, but people were very kind to mention, hey, we enjoyed that. That was really a lot of fun. And I had people from Arcola actually compliment us. And that means a lot to me too, because while, that game, we try to be fair during our broadcast to both teams, and a lot of times we have listeners from both teams. So I think that that's important to me, that, we are, I don't, balanced in the broadcast. I don't, but even when we're covering a team from outside of the area, if we do happen to have listeners, they, were complimentary of how we did the game, and they actually listened to the next broadcast, that we did, because they knew we were doing their games when no one else was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add to that other than, like, there's no point in doing this unless you know people are listening.
Right.
Like, I mean, the whole idea is that you're bringing it to people who aren't there, and so it's always gratifying to find out that there's people out there taking advantage of it, because otherwise, what are we doing? It's fun to be there, but a lot more fun when you know that it's reaching people, and that folks who want to know how the game is going are finding out through you.
The support here is tremendous. There's always things that we'd like, to maybe tweak, change, make better, this, that, or the other. And generally speaking, they listen, they try to make the best adjustments they can to make the best broadcast we can. But for me, it goes to the people back at the studios immediately during the broadcast with the board ops. And we have people here that are running the board, engineering the games. They are better than anywhere I've ever worked with. And Caleb Moody, Gail.
Yep, Gail Warner, Elizabeth.
They're the main ones that do the games.
The main ones. Brian Dust will occasionally have to jump in. You'll get your odd flex or Brian Herman game,
depending on the schedule and what people are doing.
But there's nobody that you're like,
yeah, exactly.
We're gonna have to keep an eye on things because it might be a bit of a mess back there. Yeah, that's never ever been a thought that's crossed my mind this year.
No, they're here. They communicate with us well. They tolerate us well.
I was gonna say they got to put up with us.
Yeah, and so the board ops, boy, I can't express my appreciation of them enough.
And I actually did that just a little bit, like right back in my early days of being associated with the station. Like I was mostly only doing football. I ran the board for you guys a few times, and it's like you can't just it's not just mindless work. Like you have to sit there and pay attention to the game, because you never know when they're gonna have to send it back to you for a timeout, or when maybe the cell phone drops the call.
You're right.
And you got to be ready to adjust. So those are people that are working hard, probably harder than us in a lot of ways, and they're indispensable. So yeah, definitely have to give them their recognition. And then of course everybody at the station, if they didn't value the sports in the area and find it a worthwhile endeavor, then we wouldn't get to do it. So obviously you have to appreciate that they find that it's important.
Flex schedules those board ops. He makes sure someone's here, and we've never had a situation where, we didn't have anybody. That doesn't happen. So Flex takes care of a lot of that. Dave and Tanya, figure out which games and how many, and allow us to do so many compared to most stations. And then Tanya and Angela sell the games and take care of that sort of stuff. Greg is always there helping, input. If we need a broadcaster, he makes himself available when he can. And then Millie is indispensable to me on the sports side of it, especially with writing stories that go on the website, getting all those things like that organized, keeping me in line with, hey, this is happening today, make sure you remember this, that sort of stuff. So, I mean, it's everybody involved up here. And Michelle, she schedules our commercials, the logs. She makes sure we have them. I mean, Brian Herman produces stuff for us. I mean, as far as, like the promos and stuff, he makes sure that gets where it needs to be, and that I'm not cutting something off and that sort of stuff. It's a true team effort up here.
A lot of good folks here.
Brian Herman to me is like a magicianal technology dude.
Yeah,
he does well.
He's a really smart guy.
Yes, he is.
The answer you might be expecting is like, somebody that's on TV or somebody that's in the national spotlight. But quite frankly, like when I look at this job, it's Matt Robinson, it's Greg Sapp, and it's Larry Wilson. Like those, you got two Hall of Famers and one that will be someday. And like, why would I try to emulate? Why would I try to emulate anybody else? You know, they're doing the job that we're here to do, and they have done it better than anybody else could. So why wouldn't I just try to be as much like them as possible? And I think that that's pretty much how I've approached this. Is well, I'll just do it the way they've done it because it's been working for decades now, and nobody ever says anything bad about any of those guys. So yeah, I just try to be like them. That's the easy answer, but also the answer that that really comes from the heart. So that's where I'm coming from.
Well, that's kind of you to say, and I don't know that I belong into the category with Larry and Greg. I mean, I grew up listening to Larry and Greg, and I can remember crossing the Little Wabash River Bridge between Watson and Mason on the way home, listening to a game with my mom when I was, I'm going to say 10 or 12, and saying, that's what I want to do. I want to announce games. And so I was very blessed to have that opportunity, and I mean, not very many kids can say they're doing something that they said they wanted to do when they were 10 or 12 years old or whatever it was. And so obviously Larry and Greg were inspiration to me as well. I grew up listening to Jack Buck. Man, I just love listening to Jack Buck. And I mean, not that I'm anywhere near any of these guys' category, but he was a guy that I really enjoyed listening to. And then Brian Barnhart with the U of I games, and that's what it is. It's who you listen to. If you're a Dodgers fan, you're a Vin Scully man, that type of stuff. And that's fading a little bit just because it's become such a broad spectrum now.
Yeah.
But that's still kind of the way it is and how I got shaped anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like I've got Skip Carey lines bouncing around in my head that'll be there forever. Mm-hmm. But I mean, those are people that have just reached a certain point in their profession. I'm not even going to try to compare myself to. I can tell you this. I mean, there is nothing quite as rewarding as finishing up a game and having a text message from Larry Wilson or from Greg Sapp saying, boy, that was good. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed listening to that because, again, like, those guys are as close to gods in this area as you can get in this particular realm, in this realm of high school sports. And so, boy, if you're doing something right in their book, then you keep doing it.
Yep, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, basketball is what I want to cover, and if Dustin's alongside, that is great. But it's basketball at a 1, and baseball and softball 1B for me right now. But even volleyball, we kind of figured out how to do it in the few games that we've done.
Yeah.
And we've made that kind of fun from my standpoint.
That was enjoyable. I mean, that's certainly, you have a basis of knowledge in volleyball that helps you with the play-by-play, and we had the people in Redbird Arena keeping the stats for us, which helped.
Well, that helped, yeah.
But it was a lot of fun to be there, and there was people wanted it, and so, I was glad to get to do that for folks. I mean, my answer is kind of in the same vein where it's got nothing to do with Matt, and that's not anything personal. Right. It's just I love baseball. I mean, to me, baseball is not only the greatest game ever invented, but one of the greatest things that has ever entered the human mind and come into existence. And so I will consume baseball in any way I can at any time I can, and so to get the chance to broadcast it and is just the top of the mountain for me. And plus, it's the only one of these sports that we broadcast that I was ever even like halfway decent at. So like I have a little bit better basis of knowledge for it too. So like basketball's fun. I've seen thousands of basketball games at this point in my life, but didn't play in any of them the same way that I played in the baseball games. So for me, that's just sort of where I land on it.
And look, like I said, basketball is my number one, but it's not by much. And baseball, though, does kind of lend itself to a radio broadcast, almost even more so than any other sport. So that adds to it being fun, too, is because you can have a lot of action, you can have time to fill, it can go back and forth. And so that kind of challenges you in a way, too, that other sports may not. But it's all fun, and it's all fun because the support we get from the listeners, the sponsors, the people here at the station, and each other.
Yep.
So it's just a good time to be involved with the broadcast.
Carter Brady 1 for 4 today, had a base hit in the first inning for Effingham. Carter Brady, winning pitcher.
Thank you very much, Dustin, for the color work, the play-by-play work, and of course all of those numbers.
But now let's check on some stats with Dustin White.
Yeah, at one point he was 3 for 3 today. They finally did get him out his last time up.
All right, back at T-Town, wrapping up a 9-5 victory for the Wooden Shoes over Effingham in this baseball game here today.
Brock Fearday, 3 out of 4 with a walk today, so he was on base 4 times. 3-run homer in the first inning. He doubled and scored in the third. As Brock Fearday did a good job on the hill for the Bulldogs.
Fearday's got that power at all fields. He can, in fact, it almost feels sometimes like he prefers to go the other way with it a little bit.
Thank you for what you guys do for our community. We appreciate it for all the sports. Appreciate you taking the time for me.
Thanks for thinking of us, and it's a pleasure to have that have that role in people's lives from around here, and glad that we can fill that hole, so to speak. And and again, like we've said throughout this interview, appreciate the people in my life that have helped make this possible, the people at the station who have had me along for the ride, and obviously the support team that I have behind the scenes, family, and then friends who I know listen and support me. So glad to have all those people in my life.
I echo what he says. Thank you, Tyler, for giving us this chance to kind of have this as a interesting memory that'll come up on social media from time to time, and to express our appreciation to everybody involved with it. And again, I have to go back to my wife. I was broadcasting games before we got together, and the rule was I got to keep doing whatever I was doing until I quit doing that. And so far, I haven't quit doing the sports side of things with the broadcast. She's the one who's made that possible, and I can't express my gratitude to her enough. Also, my kids, Molly and Mason, and then extends out, like Dustin said earlier, to my mom and dad helping take care of things. Her mom and dad, watching kids and going on from there throughout the years. It takes a team in every way, and
Sure. Yep.
And we're blessed to have good ones.